Hello, my name's Jim Tolles. I'm a spiritual teacher. And in this short little video, I want to talk about Spiritual Awakening Signs, the sequel. Not that anything's newly happened in the world of Spiritual Awakening Signs, but rather I want to follow up on an older video I did about Spiritual Awakening Signs. And I did this probably like 4 or 5 years ago. Because as I've grown and as I've discovered and watched more things, it's kind of added into my intuitive understanding of some things. And a lot of times I talk about 5 spiritual awakening signs. The big 4 being a sense of love. It's very deep love for yourself and all of life. A sense of wholeness, a sense of peace. And also a sense of truth and clarity, that you know what is real. But as I've grown, it's really the 5th, that this abides and it moves intelligently on its own. That to me has become more and more the real sign of a spiritual awakening, because sometimes it happens where people don't have the other 4 when they have their awakenings. And maybe we need to create a term for this. It sounds dramatic, but I might even call this like a dark awakening, where something does awaken, does start to move inside, but you don't feel love, you don't feel truth, you just feel pain. And I've seen a couple of my students come to me in this state where they've just been in this enormous amount of physical pain and not understanding what's wrong, and they go to the doctors and the doctors don't find anything wrong, and it's not like they're just depressed or something. And one of the ways that you can kind of test something like this is spiritual work and inner work and meditation and energy work and other things like that become extremely helpful to somebody who's going through this type of an awakening. And so it can be a long, dark period before someone even gets into those spaces of opening again, that many other people, they start in their inner work and their journey and in a spiritual awakening where they have moments of quiet, just profound quiet or loss of desire, where they're feeling truly whole, right? Because when we're in desire, we're not feeling whole. We're seeking for something to fulfill us. Well, when we feel whole, the desire just disappears. And that's just so common, and that's why people talk about it a lot. And I know many of you have probably seen plenty of other things talking about symptoms and signs of spiritual awakening, these huge, huge lists. But if there isn't this abiding movement within us, we could be having any kind of experience. And there are plenty of kinds of what I call spiritual openings, where you'll have a sense of deep love, and then the opening closes, right? Or there's a deep sense of peace or whatever, and then it closes. And you go back to the way things are. Nothing really pushes you. And that's the thing about a spiritual awakening, at least as far as I define it, is it's very, very persistent. It doesn't leave you alone. It's like 24/7, 365. You can engage with it or not, and it's still moving you. And so that's just that really, really key element that I want to point people towards. And I think that's really going to help some of you who, as I said, you're kind of having this dark awakening where you just wake up in the middle of the dark and there's just so much pain. And physical pain seems to be a big element in those situations where somebody is just in a horrendous amount of discomfort because of how they've lived their lives. And that, has to do with how they've lived emotionally and physically and intellectually. Like everything has just been so off compared to what would be natural for them, that they just have to move through tons of pain before they're going to get into deeper levels of clarity. So I just really want to help people hone in on that. Now, most of what people are on in the spiritual path is what I call the conscious path. And that's where awakening actually takes you. It just takes you seemingly kind of by force. It's like, you're coming with me now, right? It just grabs you and pulls you. The conscious path is where we gradually get to know ourselves. And anybody who awakens, if you truly want to be at peace, you usually have to embrace the conscious path, which is where, as a human being, we meditate and we find spiritual teachers and we find spiritual communities and we find all the tools that we need to kind of help us grow and to drop further into this allowing. And as all things are in this world, some things are temporary. The deepest tool, of course, is this abiding, moving awareness. And for somebody who's on the conscious path, most of your work is to get into that flow, to find that space inside of you that's already trying to move you in a direction and to trust it. People really don't trust themselves, and that includes people on the spiritual path. And this is not a kind of random movement. This isn't something where it's just life is throwing you around. There is a deep, defining intelligence, and only you can really know that. Only you can really feel it. It's not inherently a good feeling when we talk about this abiding energy that moves you and grows you. That's another misconception. A lot of people think, well, if it doesn't feel good, then I'm doing something wrong. Well, a lot of times, as I'm kind of mentioning with this made-up term of dark awakening, it doesn't feel good because you aren't in alignment. You are not healthy. So I just wanted to offer you some more of these thoughts to appreciate with all the different spiritual awakening signs, and they're so conflicting, where you want to go with your attention, which is inwards. And with that true awakening, whether or not you have these other additional signs, they really become secondary signs of something arising, like the chronic fatigue stuff. If you don't have this kind of moving inner energy going on, there's a lot of reasons you can be tired. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with awakening. There's a lot of reasons you can start questioning life. We have many kinds of spiritual epiphanies and realizations and revelations, but they don't move on their own. The awakened space moves. It can be important, and there can be just this natural step forward in consciousness when you have a little spiritual epiphany, like, oh, wow, people really don't have to work a 9-to-5 job to live in this world, right? That's a small epiphany, right? But you're stepping through illusion, a belief that, it's supposed to be some way, then you see through it. And you may not go back, to thinking an old way. So there can be that gentle movement. And that's the thing about the conscious path, is you kind of gently take step after step after step after step. But you can also start stepping backwards. With a true awakening, it's difficult to backslide into unconsciousness. And when you do, you feel it, right? Tends to be a huge repercussion. Now, it doesn't mean you can't eventually fight off your own inner energy. People do it. I've seen it. It's really, really sad to watch. People can plateau because they're just too exhausted doing too many other things and not allowing themselves to focus on themselves, or because they just want to get off this train. And that's a big issue for anybody who's had, once again, this made-up term, the dark awakening, where you're just in so much pain, you just want this thing to stop. It is really difficult to want to accept powerful inner change that brings so much pain. But to truly grow, you have to. If this is what's before you, then you have to accept this. Because in so doing, you're accepting yourself. Everything else is a negation of yourself, and that's why you're in so much pain. You said no to yourself throughout your life, and you probably didn't even realize it. And that's what really stinks about ignorance. We don't realize what deep of a hole we're digging for ourselves. And to wake up at the bottom of that hole in a cold, slimy mud with bugs crawling all over you is pretty awful. And as I said, for some people, this awakened energy, it just starts moving. Maybe there is a catalyst, maybe not. It doesn't necessarily have to have one. It's just its own intelligence, and at certain times it decides, I'm going to start moving. But with that time and care and understanding and practicing of self-love, these other elements do start to arise, and those four main ones I talk about, where you just become more and more clear about what's real and what's true. You feel more whole. Desire drops away. You feel loving, and you feel peaceful. And so those become, I guess now, I would say the secondary signs, where before I was kind of calling them primary signs. When this abiding awareness is there, it will move you into those things. And other things will come up too that other people mention. And if there's an abiding movement inside you, then sure, there are elements of healing, of spiritual growth that you can have, like the fatigue or insomnia, these types of things. But we don't use those things to immediately assume that there's an awakening. That's a growing, living force inside you. So these are some thoughts. I have some links down below that you can check out if you want to read more of my work on my blog at spiritualawakeningprocess.com. Once again, my name's Jim Tolles. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Have a great day. Bye.